Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I'm going to request to read here intermittently, if I may. I have an article here from the Bond Buyer, which is a publication. We are asking for municipal bonds, if you all don't know that, to fill our gaping hole in our budget. What you're doing tonight, in bits and pieces, will eventually, maybe, if we could reduce expenses enough, help us to repay the debt that we are trying to obtain. Okay, Standard & Poor's placed the state's A- rated general obligation bonds on negative credit watch. This is dated Wednesday, June 17th, 2009. Standard & Poor's action affects approximately $59 billion of GO debt, that's our general obligation bonds, as well as $8.1 billion of A- rated appropriation debt. It's the second such rating action since the end of May, when Fitch Ratings revised the outlook on California's A rating to negative. Now, what does this matter to us? Well, also in this publication, they stated about the conference committee's actions. They also commented on the budget, on the governor's budget. What it says is that the votes taken in the conference committee, however, diverge from the governor's proposal in a number of significant ways, mostly ways that widen the budget gap. That's what Wall Street is saying about the conference committee. It also says here that Lockyer, our treasurer, a Democrat, has told lawmakers that they need to adopt budget revisions equal to the governor's proposals, including significant reserve in order to avoid a cash crunch by the end of July. He said those actions are needed to persuade investors, this is Wall Street guys, to persuade investors to loan California up to $10 billion to manage the state's cash flow over the course of fiscal 2010, which begins July 1st. So I'm not making an ideological argument here. It doesn't really matter, quite honestly, where we reduce, where we cut. We have to. That's the bottom line. If we don't reduce by $16 billion, and I was saying 15% looking at cash flows, if we don't reduce by roughly that amount, we are going to be right back here in a couple months, because we may ultimately get some loans, but they're going to default based on what you're doing tonight. This stuff may or may not hit the market, but then when it gets challenged and legal wranglings begin, or we find out that we haven't quite reduced our expenses enough and we're back in the hole again, which is exactly what happened to us in February, we'll be right back here again. This is an ongoing problem because we need to reorganize our financial picture. We are bankrupt. We are fundamentally bankrupt. We're just not declaring it. And the more we just keep kicking this can down the road, and I know that's a catchy phrase, it's been used a lot, the more we're going to be here. We're going to be working on this no matter what we do tonight for about 2 years. If we do it right, it'll be healed in about 2 years. I don't know how many of you have ever worked through a bankruptcy scenario with a company or had any exposure to it. But we had a municipal in Orange County over 10 years ago. Everything was looked at. Now, the state of California is sovereign, just like the federal government. We're sovereign. And what does that mean? That means we cannot declare bankruptcy, but we have the ability to tax, which is why we're sovereign.
30 seconds, Ms. Harkey.
Okay, so we have some choices here. We either tax everybody out of the state, which we did. We passed a huge tax in February, and our revenues are still declining. So that's not the answer. We need to make some serious reductions, and what came out of conference committee is not enough. And also, according to this report on Wall Street, adds to our problem in future years, in this year. Thank you very much.